man, it would look just perfect. This is one of those things. It's just got to be done.
Hi, I'm Joe, and welcome to MotorCity Boat Werks. Let's get to work. If you're new to the channel, I want to welcome you, and if you're one of our returning subscribers, welcome back to the works. I especially want to take this opportunity to welcome our Patreons, those of you who are members of the Workers, our fan club, who have decided to donate to the channel to ensure that we keep making episodes. I really appreciate it. This show would not be possible without your support. A couple weeks ago, I did an episode about a new addition to the Boat Werks, a 1981 Skipper 20 sailboat. It's a shoal-draft trailerable sailboat. It has a lot of character. It's got some classic lines. I've always wanted one of these boats. It's been on my bucket list, and I decided to finally buy one, and I brought it back to the Boat Werks, thinking about what might be my ambition, my goals for this boat, and how I might turn it into something a little extra special. That episode was extremely popular. More than 60,000 people viewed that episode in just 3 weeks. Over 1,500 liked the episode and thought it was very interesting. Several hundred people left comments weighing in on whether or not I should leave the boat original, do some sort of Pilothouse conversion, or even go one step further and make a salty little pocket trawler.
This episode is about my plan for this little boat. We'll talk about what I've decided. I hope you stick with me.
Now I want to warn you, if you've come to the channel looking for grinding and a lot of stop action photography with annoying music on it, that's not my show. MotorCity Boat Werks is about concise episodes that stay on topic, that really talk about some of the how-to and nuances of amateur boat building and boat restoration. We do things a little bit differently here in the boat shop. The main mission in the Boat Werks is to finish the 1986 Albin family cruiser, the pocket trawler that's behind me. I'm rebuilding it from a bare hull back to something better than it once was. But in the meantime, it's fun to have another boat that we can mess around with and talk about design principles and some of the very basic steps that are involved in restoring an old classic sailboat. Like all my episodes, I think it's important to start at the beginning, to kind of talk about what's the plan going to be? How are we going to go about doing some of these things? What are the parameters, the budget? What is it that we're going to ultimately try and achieve? And then we follow that plan and stick to it as best we can, adapting along the way as things may reveal themselves and challenges may become more apparent.
We're going to talk about all of these things in this episode and some of the episodes that will follow as we go along. I encourage you to leave questions or comments below.
All right, first thing I need to do is I got to get the boat washed. I need to get the boat washed because I really need to inspect the gel coat and see what the finish is like on deck. What's it like on the hull? See if there's any actual damage that may need to be repaired over time. And the only way to do that is to scrub this thing down, try and get an idea of what condition the gel coat's in.
To do this, we clean with a bucket of hot water, a stiff bristle brush. You can use natural or nylon, and then I like to use some type of soft scrub, usually with bleach. When you're doing this, you want to make sure you're wearing your junky clothes. Now, this is not what you use to clean a newer boat, something that has a decent gel coat finish. This is for an old boat that's been sitting outside, and you really need to scrub it to get an idea of what condition the fiberglass is in.
Now, I've been scrubbing on it just a little bit here, and I'm going to tell you, it doesn't look good. The gel coat has kind of opened up. There's some pores, and in the pores, well, there's mold and dirt and all kinds of junk that's been there for probably, a couple dozen years. And what this ultimately means is that the gel coat's too far gone. It usually is on boats that are this old, 40 years old.
So what's really happened here is that years and years of sitting out in the open, being exposed to UV and all types of elements, well, the gel coat has begun to oxidize. It gets a little chalky, it begins to break down, and this is where the pores, the surface kind of opens up and of course begins to collect dirt and more contaminants. This is why it's so important that when you have a new boat, you keep it properly covered, you protect the surface, by waxing it and keeping it clean and wiping it down after regular use. If you leave it out under a tree, well, all sorts of things are going to happen to it. There's 2 gouges on the starboard side of the boat that are going to have to be fixed. This is probably due to some type of a docking maneuver that failed. Now you'll notice some crazing along the tool rail of the boat. This is fairly standard. It's usually related to age. This is due to a strike or maybe to a load point where the deck is having pressure applied to it, like from a fitting or maybe a stanchion. This is very easy to fix. It's really a cosmetic issue, and we'll cover that repair as we go through this restoration.
It's going to mean that we got to paint it, but we can paint it any way we like and make it any color scheme that we like, which will really transform this boat into something other than what it was. This is also a great thing if I'm going to be adding a pilot house to the boat, because of course you can paint the pilot house, paint the deck, everything will match seamlessly and it'll look like it came that way from the factory. It'll just be painted instead of gel coat. Now I don't mess with gel coat. The reason I don't mess with gel coat is that while as an amateur you can do some gel coat work, but to be honest with you, for the time and the effort, the type of boats that I'm restoring and their intended use, there's really no point in having anything that nice. Painting is much better. It's much more forgiving. If you damage the boat, if you drop something on the deck, if you scrape something or otherwise tear it up, you just get your sandpaper, you sand it down, and you put another coat of paint on it. Very Navy-like, and it just works great.
The good news is that the hull of the boat is actually in great shape. The gel coat really looks good because it hasn't been exposed to as much UV as the deck, and it's not a horizontal surface. It's really in very good shape and will probably clean up nicely just by being polished.
It might seem kind of tedious to show the process of washing the boat and analyzing the condition of the deck, but I think it serves as a lesson that we've always got to be kind of assessing the situation. What do we have to work with before we make any decision about we're going to go this direction or we're going to go that direction in our boat restoration or boat building. Next on the list is we've got to figure out what is going on with the foam in the engine well of the Skipper 20 sailboat.
So what I want to do here is I'm going to open up the engine well here. What's up with all this foam? What is going on inside here? So let's check this out. All right. So this is the engine well. This is how it was designed to be used on the Skipper 20. There's a little panel here. You put your outboard engine inside here. I mean, this is the motor that came with the boat. This is a Mercury 3.5. It works great. I don't have it super tightened down, but essentially it mounts inside there. What I want to show you is you can see the cavity down there. It's actually quite large for, this size motor. Now that's probably because back in the 80s they used a 2-stroke and there's no telling how big the lower unit was that had to fit through that hole, but there needs to be some type of a plug. Could just be a simple piece of plastic or something that fits a little closer to the inside of the engine, and we just kind of bolt it in place. This will help prevent water splashing up inside the engine well and kind of just making a mess. Why did they put the foam in there? What's that all about? What is going on there? And the answer is, from talking to the previous owner, it sounds like there was an issue with excess water, either from a following sea or from being on a mooring or from even just sailing. Water would come up through that opening inside the engine well, and it would get inside the engine well area, and it would run down to the lowest point. Now the lowest point is a bulkhead that's about midways here inside the cockpit, and what happens is that water gets against, there's some plywood and stuff down there, and it gets it wet. And to solve that over time, to kind of remove this water issue, the previous owner went ahead and he had some commercial closed cell foam sprayed inside there, basically fill up that space so that the water would have no place to go, so that if any water did come in, well, it wouldn't run down inside there. It would be in a higher in a different place. This is not the solution that I would have done. Nevertheless, we're stuck dealing with it. One of the problems with this is that by putting this foam inside here, well, you now lose access to this scupper fittings and the hoses that are attached to it, and consequently the through-hull fittings that go, that are coming out the hull, wherever those may be. And because all of this is now filled in with foam, if you ever had to replace these or do something to the through-hull fittings or anything like that, well, you can't do that because there's foam inside there, and you'll never get this out. It is forever like that. What do? We got to live with it, I think. It doesn't seem to be harming anything. No water is getting down inside there. We've had quite a bit of rain here lately. I've been checking the boat. No water's leaking anywhere. Seem to be doing great. Even when I washed the boat yesterday, spraying water everywhere, water really didn't go anywhere. And if it does, it sits on top of that foam. The foam definitely is a sound deadener. Definitely is a stiffener. Stiffened up the hull. It's definitely added some buoyancy to the well here. And of course, I think he used the same thing in the forward, I don't want to say anchor locker, but way up there at the bow of the boat, maybe by the stem. The good news is that it's a commercial product. It's not great stuff. It's definitely the real deal. Pretty robust, waterproof. We just leave it. So the real question is, how do you finish that off? Because there's a lot of uneven surfaces kind of trapping dirt and stuff like that. What are we going to do with that? What I think the answer is we're going to figure out how to paint it maybe, and how to make it look better. That's the only thing I can think of.
All right, so here is something else that I want to show you. Take a look here. We're at the port stern quarter of the sailboat here, and I want to show you this right here. What is this contraption? This is a side stern quarter mount for an outboard motor. The previous owner wasn't happy with the motor being inside the engine well, and he didn't like the way that the engine created drag for the sailboat. So what he did was built this side-mounted, transom mount. But of course, the Skipper 20 does not have a flat transom. It has a round canoe stern. So this is mounted, almost to the aft end of the boat. It's probably within 3 feet of the very aft end of the boat. It's on the port side. It's up near the tow rail. The mount for the motor is probably 3-4 inches below the tow rail. You can see there. It's a fairly robust construction, and it's an innovative solution to having the motor, instead of having it inside the engine well, having it out here somewhere where it's accessible. But the problem is when the boat is on a port tack, when the boat's leaned over on the port side, well, you run the risk of dunking the outboard motor, in the water, especially if you have any sort of following sea or any kind of issue like that. If you're really going to weather, you will put that motor probably underwater. So I think this is a fundamental reason why the engine needs to go back inside the engine well where it's protected. We just need to come up with a solution to kind of reduce the amount of water that might backflow up inside the engine well. This will have to be removed.
Right off the bat, I think we're going to keep this a sailboat. There are a number of Skipper 20s on the used market that are missing their masts and rigging. They really are better candidates for some type of a motor launch or a mini pocket trawler. This boat should stay a sailboat.
So after all that, I've eliminated the option of converting the Skipper 20 into some sort of micro pocket trawler. We'll put that one aside. But now the question is, should I keep the boat original, or should I try and do a Pilothouse conversion? When I first suggested doing a Pilothouse conversion, I received a lot of pushback from some well-meaning individuals. They insisted that it would ruin the sailboat, that it was going to make it unsailable. It might sink. It would probably be too top heavy. It would have too much windage and get blown over. I don't know if I believe any of those things. I've already done one small Pilothouse conversion on a compact 16. Be sure to check out that video. What I do know is that a Pilothouse has the ability to transform a tiny little trailerable sailboat into something a little more extraordinary.
The real question is, what do we do with the boat? And I talked before about adding a Pilothouse, and I've got my tape measure here.
And we're going to take some measurements and talk about this and see what we might be able to come up with.
Everybody has put in their opinions. Lots of different folks chiming in from all over. Folks from UK, few folks from the Netherlands, folks from the United States. Everybody's got an opinion on what should happen with this little boat. And, you know, the consensus seems to be that a lot of people kind of like it in its original state, that they don't really think that it could be messed with or should be messed with. And, you know, I can appreciate that. I can understand that everyone thinks that you ought to kind of leave it the way it is. But, you know, one of the things we do in MotorCity Boat Works is we kind of do projects that other people don't do. And in the past, I have done a very successful pilot house conversion on a compact 16 sailboat. They said it couldn't be done. And they said that it would add too much weight, too much windage, that the boat wouldn't sail properly, that it would ruin the lines, that it would be unsellable, that it would be unsailable, and that no one would like it. And I got to be honest with you, that's simply not true. That compact 16 pilot house is one of my favorite projects that I ever did, and it sold for a nice profit and was really a great sailor. I sailed it on Lake Huron and I absolutely loved it. My kids just thought it was the best thing, the bee's knees. Unfortunately, when I made that boat, you know, I didn't have the YouTube channel, so I never really got to document how I did a pilot house. And so that's what makes me wonder, maybe we should do a pilot house for this one so people can see the process that I used to do it, become more familiar with Coosa board and kind of understand its capabilities. But there are some fundamental things that are different about this boat than the compact 16. And it really has to do with the placement of the mast. This is the mast step where the mast is mounted to the deck, is right above here. The position of the mast on this boat relative, you know, compared to like the compact 16, is there was a lot more room actually between where the mast was and this bulkhead here for the companionway. On the compact 16, there was a lot more room. So consequently, when you made the pilot house and you opened it up, well, there became quite a bit more room here, open. The companionway on the compact 16 was also very narrow. This doorway is extremely wide. It was very, very narrow on the other boat. This one's quite wide. This is quite open. You can see the forward hatch is really quite wide. And so what does all this mean? Well, what this means is that usually when you do this pilot house conversion like I do, you mount the pilot house to the deck, it bolts in place. Maybe you have to cut this open. But on this boat, it's already wide enough. You would not need to do that. But one of the problems is that because the mast is right here, well, you can't open this up where my head is right now. So you don't actually gain any headroom. There's no way to open this up. It's a space that is what it is. There's really not much room here. That's just the way it is. So what does all this mean? Well, you know, again, all of this interior of the boat, the headliner, the trim pieces, the portholes. I sprayed a bunch of water on this yesterday. We were searching for leaks to see if anything is leaking, and it's not. And there doesn't appear to be any leaks or softness behind the headliner. Everything is in really, really great shape. A lot of people want me to leave this boat original, but I think this boat is right for some sort of a pilot house conversion. It will transform this boat and make it something a little extra special. Gives you coverage when you're steering the boat from the bridge deck right here. And the whole pilot house itself is able to be bolted on and off the boat so that if you ever wanted to remove it, if you ever wanted to get rid of it, oh, I don't like it because it's ugly and I'm a purist, I want it to be perfect, right? I want it to be original. You could get rid of the pilot house and not worry about it. And this, I think, is what makes this a great pilot house conversion project. I know you're a purist. You want a Skipper 20, oh, it looks so beautiful, I want it to be original. Guess what? There's 399 other Skipper 20s out there in people's backyards, buried in the weeds, hidden in their garages. Someone's got a brand new one, original, looks just the way you want it, right? But if you want something extra special, a 20-foot pilot house, It won't add extra weight. It's not going to add extra windage. It's not going to cause a problem for its sailing. It's just going to make it better. Trust me. I've done it once before. I think I could do it again.
I know it can be hard to imagine what this might look like. Can you see it? I can imagine it. And I like it.
So far, our plan entails restoring this boat, keeping it a sailboat. We're going to paint the deck. We may paint the hull. We're going to transform the way it looks. I'm going to improve the engine well, and I'm going to install some stairs that go down inside the interior of the boat. The final question is, should this be a Pilothouse conversion, or should we leave the boat original? I invite you to leave a comment below or drop me an email at the MotorCity Boat Werks website or on the homepage of my YouTube channel. Next time, I promise, we'll answer the question, to Pilothouse or no Pilothouse? That is the question. You know, 17 years ago, I wrote a book about owning and restoring a classic fiberglass sailboat. I got it published, but I eventually had to stop selling the book because of my day job. I promised myself when I retired that I was going to get that book back in print, and wouldn't you know it, it's ready to go. Now, I'm telling you, it's not Shakespeare, but it is a good recounting of what it's like to own a classic fiberglass sailboat and the effort and some of the projects that you might go through if you own one of these types of boats. It's also a little humorous because I talk about how I bought the boat, how I almost lost my finger, and all of the misadventures and adventures that I had with that particular boat. The book is 150 pages. It has over 135 black and white photos and technical illustrations. I guess you could say the book is free.
Free? From now until Christmas Day.
All you have to do is go over to my Patreon account and sign up for the workers. Hey, don't take my word for it. Check out a couple episodes and see what you think. I'll send you an autographed copy. You'll support the channel. You'll even get a shop decal out of it. You'll help me ensure that we keep making content, real amateur boat building and boat restoration content. I want to thank you for your support. This channel would not be possible without you.